Welcome to Bible Believers Fellowship and the ministry of bbfohio.com and our continuing study of Daniel chapter 8 as Gabriel continues describing Antiochus and Antichrist in verse 24. If you have any questions, comments, or prayer requests, please send those by email to bbfohio@yahoo.com, or you can send those by U.S. Postal to P.O. Box 662, Worthington, Ohio 43085. And now we begin our study of it, Daniel chapter 8, verse 24, titled, Gabriel Continues Describing Antiochus and Antichrist. This is part 1
Amen.
Of 2.
Thank you, Gloria. Give me a round of applause. I'll take that. Gabriel, the angel, is going to continue describing Antiochus and Antichrist. We left off with, looked closely at verse 23. But as you're getting all geared up, I just want to ask you, have you heard about this Tide Pod challenge? Is anyone here stupid enough to do this? I just want to know. In case you don't know, they sell the little Tide Pods detergents, and there's a select number of young people who have been filming themselves or videotaping or whatever you call it now, and biting into it and causing blisters and damage to their mouth, and then putting it on YouTube. Yeah, the whole design is that when it touches liquid, it falls apart. So all you have to do is put it in your mouth, and if you leave it there just a few seconds, it opens up on your mouth. It's called the Tide Pod Challenge. I challenge you not to do it. Amen? And yeah, I'll use them for laundry. But just want you to understand, contrary to what you might think by seeing it on the news and everything, there's actually very few people doing this. But they're just the type that will put it on the internet. Yeah. But here's my message to anyone watching. If you think Tide Pods are good, try the cotton candy in the attic. Because you figure if they're dumb enough to do that, they'll have a little. What's the name of that pink stuff they used to? Yeah, I know it's insulation. What the Pink Panther? What was the name of that? They used to have commercials with Pink Panther. I can't remember. I thought some of you old people would remember because who? Owens, there it is, yeah. Owens Cotton Candy, it's the best. All right, back to our study. I just had to share that. I thought that was funny. Yes. Be very painful. The trip would be very painful. So, all right, we're going to look at verse 24, but we want to make a clarification. I think it was either you or Charlie or both of you. We had a little discussion about Alexander the Great and how he died. And the most credible explanation for his death has been that he died, basically drunk himself to death. And just for your information, we do know that he died ingesting alcohol. Though there is... there's been several theories put forth over the years. One was syphilis. I think you mentioned that. He didn't die from syphilis. We know that. They have studied the information that they have. They actually have numerous people wrote down an account of how he died, and they all agreed on the symptoms. If I understand right, they actually have been able to do some testing of his remains. But I have to look that up again. But it's possible that he might have actually been poisoned with alcohol and not have died from alcohol poisoning. What I mean is, you can drink yourself to death. You could just, I think it has to be hard liquor, but you could get some wild turkey. I'm looking at you because you're an expert. But I think you can get wild turkey by the bottle, and if you guzzled one full bottle of it, if that didn't kill you, you guzzle another one and it would.
I can tell you that generally one doesn't kill you.
I bet it would most people.
Not a person who
No, I mean, you could probably drink 4 or 5. But I do know, there's a fellow I knew who was he was a pretty heavy drinker, and he was bigger. He wasn't built as muscular as Stephen, but he was a big guy, and he drank about 2/3 of a bottle of tequila, and about killed him. It was a fifth, and then I won't name names because people down Southern Ohio do. Some of those folks do watch this, and I wouldn't want to upset anybody down there. But there was a young man, my brother's age, who drank himself to death in one night. Died of alcohol poisoning. So it can happen. But according to what I found was recent research conducted by a Dr. Leo Shep from the National Poison Center in New Zealand suggests that Alexander died from drinking poisonous wine. Now, this wasn't wine that was poisoned. It's poisonous wine from an innocuous-looking plant that, when fermented, is incredibly deadly. Dr. Shep's research, co-authored by Otago University classics expert Dr. Pat Wheatley and published in the medical journal Clinical Toxicology. And if you're wondering why I'm reading that, because I get accused every once in a while of just making stuff up. Those are my references. They found the most plausible culprit was Veratrum album, known as white hellebore. The white flowered plant, which can be fermented into a poisonous wine, was well known to the Greeks as a herbal treatment, but if you ingested it by large quantities like you would a glass of wine, it kills you. Dr. Shep's theory was that Veratrum album could have been fermented as a wine that was given to the leader. It would have tasted very bitter, but it could have been sweetened, and Alexander was likely to have been very drunk at the banquet. So what they're saying was he was already drunk. They sweetened this stuff up or maybe mixed it with other wine, and he drank it, and it killed him. So I just wanted to clarify that. No, actually nothing like it. The symptoms caused by consuming the plant also fit with the description of what Alexander experienced over the 12 days before he died. In other words, like I said, they had this numerous people who described his death. And so if any of you go to prison, let this be your warning. There are prisoners who will ferment anything and call it hooch. And then there's prisoners who die from drinking that hooch. And there's also prisoners who they don't like that they sell the hooch to and purposely kill. So if you go to prison, some guy doesn't like you, he offers you hooch, don't take it. All right? Take notes. Take notes. I want you to know this because if you go to prison, I don't want to be blamed if you die. So with that, it's important information. We return to Gabriel's description of Antiochus Epiphanes, who is a type of Antichrist. Now, real quick, I want to go ahead and read verses 23 to 27. I'll read the even. You start out with me and read the odd, beginning verse 23. In the latter time of their kingdom, that means you, everybody read. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. Okay, there's only 2 people reading. Okay, read louder next time. Verse 24, and I'll read this, I'll read the even. And his power shall be mighty. This is what we're going to look at tonight. But not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper in practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. And the vision of the evening and the morning which was told is true. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days. Afterward I rose up and did the king's business, and I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. Gabriel has just explained it. He's like, that was good, but no one understood what he's saying. We'll come back to that in our next study. That next study is going to be thick. Look at that, verse 25. But we looked at verse 23 in detail in our last study. Now we're going to pick up with verse 24. And point out again, this is fulfilled during or before the first coming of Jesus Christ in the person of Antiochus Epiphanes. So we turn our focus line upon line to verse 24. Keep in mind, so far, what have we learned? We learned that Antiochus, I spelled it wrong, Epiphanes, so far he appears before the first coming of Christ. And you think of what's going to happen when the Antichrist comes, that's right before the second coming. See the parallels? He appeared while Israel was in a state of apostasy. Israel is in a state of apostasy right now. Not only are very few of them believers in Jesus Christ, but better than 80% of the Jews in Israel are atheists/agnostic. They don't even profess faith in the existence of God. Antiochus Epiphanes showed up and worked for global unity, of course by force, but he also tried to influence people. When he took over a territory, he tried to get rid of their fundamentalist religion and their culture and their language and so forth. Sounds like the liberals. Liberals want to get rid of Christmas. The liberals want to get rid of the national anthem. They want to get rid of "In God We Trust." They want to get rid of male and female and add all kinds of nonsensical genders and so forth. So it's the same thing going on today. He was a narcissistic, and I use that term because you know what I mean if you've paid attention to Obama the last 8 years. He was psychotically fearless, unlike Obama, really. And his religion and philosophy was occult. And his coming had been foretold in this very text that we're studying. And he dresses like the popes. So if you take all of that and then look for somebody is yet to come, then you're ready to identify the Antichrist. Now, I personally do not believe Christians are going to see the Antichrist. There are some good Bible believers who disagree with me on that. They think that somehow or some way God's going to reveal who the Antichrist is. Well, here's what I have to say is I believe it's the Pope. And so when we're raptured, if that Pope is still alive after the rapture, then that must be the Antichrist. But I don't think we're going to know it until the rapture, basically. But those of you watching this who are not saved, those may watch this and the rapture's happened. Follow that list and what we're going to study tonight, and you can identify the Antichrist. He lives in Rome. Verse 24 begins then by saying, "And his power shall be mighty." And then it says, "but not by his own power." Did you get that? His power will be mighty, but not by his own power. And so Antiochus IV, Antiochus Epiphanes, like the Antichrist, was satanically empowered. We'll read, we've studied already in the book of Revelation. It says this about the Antichrist. It says, "And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast." Think of it this way. You know that if I brought a statue of Mary in here and said it's just a useless, carving, or if it's plastic or whatever. But if you pray to that thing, burn your incense, do your little rosary beads, then a spirit behind that will receive that worship. You understand that? That's what the Bible teaches. You'll see where the Bible says that the idol is nothing. Isaiah makes fun, mocks him, says it's just you carved it, now you think it's going to be your God. It can't even talk to you. It can't see you. It can't walk. You have to carry the thing around. And like we've seen in some of the funny YouTube videos, they drop them. And that's hilarious because then they cry and ah! But if you worship that thing, there's a spirit behind that. And when they worship the Antichrist, they will be in fact worshiping Satan. Look close at it. They worship the dragon which gave power unto the beast. They'll be worshiping the Antichrist, the beast. Now, verse 24 then says, "And he shall destroy wonderfully." Well, if you study what happened with Antiochus Epiphanes, His destructive power caused the world to look on with wonder. Not just because he was conquering so much, but what he did when he conquered. He thoroughly took over and began to basically turn everybody into this, it was just basically like a cult. And that's what's going to happen with the Antichrist. But of course you can look at, some of you have studied Lenin and the Bolsheviks, or you can study Hitler and the Nazis. You can Mussolini's little, the Duce. The Chinese with Mao Zedong, and they had their own little red book that it was like their Bible. Every Chinese citizen had to have one of those and was supposed to read it daily. Yeah. Yep, the communists used little cartoon books to communicate because a lot of their people weren't very literate. That's what happened when Antiochus took over, and so will it be when the Antichrist, the beast, rules and conquers. In Revelation 17:8, the first part of that verse says, "The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition." And look what it says, "And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder." The beast will be something that will amaze people from the time he appears on the scene to the time he's gone. That's what it means. Look at your text. It says, "He shall destroy wonderfully." The way that word is used most of the time these days, you're like, "Oh, that's wonderful. He's going to destroy wonderfully." What's that mean? That sounds nice. No, that's not. It's going to make people wonder. W-O-N-D-E-R, not wander, W-A-N-D. Wonder, like, whoa. It's just going to leave people speechless. And again, it's what's happened when people like Napoleon and Hitler have conquered, and people just were in awe of it. Alexander the Great, as we discussed a couple of studies back. So Antiochus Epiphanes, we'll mention this again, but you know what Epiphanes meant was the visible God, small g. He gave himself that name. He had self-esteem. Yeah, he was full of self-love. His treatment of Jews was worse than the Pharaohs, Assyria, and Babylon combined. See, and that's what made this so wonderfully impressive to those who suffered under him. It is an amazing thing to read about if you have time to read what happened, the accounts, and of course some of it's in the Maccabees, in the Apocrypha, the non-inspired works. But the rule of Antichrist will be even worse. So when you read about Antiochus Epiphanes or the Pharaohs or Babylon or Syria or Hitler or Mao Zedong or Lenin or whoever, the coming Antichrist is going to be worse. And Jesus said this about that time, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be." Two things are going to collide. We're going to have the most evil, wicked man doing the most evil, wicked things ever seen by man. And then God's response will be wrath like man has never experienced. And they'll both take place during that time. So back to Daniel 8:24, next phrase there is that he shall prosper and practice. We're going to see more about this in later prophecies in Daniel about the Antichrist. But he'll be a diplomat, but he will be a religious leader. That's one of the main reasons, one of the main supports for the idea that it's the Pope. He is going to, and by the way, people, I'm not saying this to make you feel bad about yourself, but most people are completely ignorant of the history of the popes and the Roman Catholic Church. And because of that, they don't think of the Pope in terms of military. And they have to understand that only in the last 100 years has the Pope not used military might. And I believe it's God making that happen because it wasn't time yet. But when the time comes, and I think we're close, and all that has to happen, a few million people disappear tomorrow. And then the Gog-Magog war takes place. 5 out of 6 Muslims in those countries that are a part of that war die. You just erased a huge portion of the human population, and some of them just disappeared. And the world hears that and they're like, nee, 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 nee. Because that sounds wild to them, and it's going to be even wilder when it happens, and it's going to be even wilder when it's someone sitting right next to them. Someone they're looking right at. Aren't very many professors that are going to disappear, but they'll have some students disappear. Aren't very many preachers in the mainline denominations going to disappear, but if it happened on a Sunday, I think a few of their people would disappear. And they're going to say, well, it wasn't the rapture. We're Christians. If it was the rapture, we'd be gone. That's what they're going to say. And of course, if it was the rapture, the Pope wouldn't still be here. Yeah. Then there's all this chaos. And one thing leads to another, and the world comes together and says, you know, we need peace. We need to come together as humanity. We need to come together as one. And here's this man who already has about 2 billion people on the planet who think he's a little god already. And they elevate him, and then he takes control of the military. And that could be Europe's military, or it could be United Nations forces. It could be, you know, there's several different ways of seeing that happen. But he'll also implement economic policy that for a short time will benefit everybody. And listen, socialism works until you run out of other people's money. And when you read this thing here that we're reading, and you read all the collective prophecies about the Antichrist, he's going to start out and everybody's going to prosper, but it's going to start to crumble. Just like socialism always does. Yeah. Now you say, well, the Pope, economic, if you don't know what I'm saying right now is just reality, then you haven't been paying attention. The Pope Francis that we have right now has been running around preaching economics. He's calling for a world economy, a world monetary system. He's already calling for the economic system in its base form that the Bible says is going to happen. And you still have all these evangelicals who are too busy kissing up to the Pope and kissing up to the Catholic Church and not wanting to offend somebody who might have a Catholic relative in the church. So they won't preach this stuff. But I could go on, and sometime I'm going to. We're going to do another study. The Pope is the Antichrist. We did a study on that. How many years ago has that been? It was when Ratzinger was Pope. And I think it was right about the time Francis became Pope. It was right after that, I think. So however long Francis... Is that how long Francis has been? Yeah. So we're due. We're due. We'll do another study on that. Well, Antiochus' reign was marked by success right up to the end. And he was that kind of a leader. And that's why so many Jews went along with his program. Don't get this wrong. He was terrible to the Jews, but once he got power, he was only terrible to you if you didn't go along with his program. Like the Antichrist. Take his mark, and he'll be good to you. You'll go to hell, but he'll be good to you. And that's the way Antiochus was. And that's the way the Pope is today. And you know, just a year and a half or 2 years ago, Francis went into a Waldensian church. And again, if you know church history, what I said makes no sense. And yet it happened. He goes into a Waldensian church. The popes, you can read about it in the history of the Waldenses by a guy named Wiley, who wrote the book. The popes almost wiped them from the face of the earth. Almost destroyed the Waldenses completely. Now he's in their churches. That's just an amazing thing to think about. But yeah. That's why that book that we've given away, The Trail of Blood, it's a perfect title. If you folks don't have that, I think the local church Bible publishing still sells those. Every time we get a stack of them, they disappear. We're going to have to get some more. So again, it's Antiochus and Antichrist, a perfect parallel when you look at Antiochus to the reign of the beast. In Revelation 13:4, we read the first part of that verse a couple minutes ago. And they worshiped the dragon which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, look at this, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And that's why so many people kind of lost their minds, and I'm talking Christians, and thought that Obama was the Antichrist. Because if you remember, how many of you are old enough to remember 2008? And people were just like, who? There's nobody like this guy. He's so wonderful. The only thing that man ever did in his life was give a speech. He never did. He never held a real job. He was called a community organizer. What's that mean? That means he doesn't do anything. He gets paid for giving speeches and motivating people to go against those Republicans. That's about what it came down to. And they had his posters on the wall and in the windows. Do you remember that? Yeah.
The red and blue posters?
Yeah, the what was it said? Forward was what a lot of them said. With hope and change, yeah. I mean, we're talking as big as the map back there, and people were putting them in their windows in their home facing the street. Yeah, Johnny?
Did I hear like there's a bunch of magazines that put his face on the cover a bunch of times?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah.
What's that guy's name, Al? He was kind of be like Al. No, it was Al something, but he was a community organizer in Chicago.
Oh, Saul Alinsky.
Saul Alinsky.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah, he followed his book.
pattern and game.
And Saul Alinsky dedicated his book to Lucifer. Did you know that? That book that Obama followed was dedicated to Lucifer. In the very front of it, that's who he dedicated the book to. Yeah. So, verse 24 continues and says, and shall prosper in practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And I don't really say much about that right there, but the mighty, people that you think are big shots now, listen folks, who's mighty? Russia is going to be destroyed in the Gog-Magog war. Who's left that's mighty? There's China, and then there's the United States of America. And it really gets people upset when I say this, but listen, I'm telling you, when the rapture happens and about anywhere from 10 to 20 million deplorables are removed, then liberals take over. And the Jews are going to leave America within days or weeks, because once the Christians are gone, they'll turn on Israel and the Jews like you haven't ever seen in this country before. And those Jews are going to take their money with them. And so that's going to leave a bunch of unsaved people, including a lot of Catholics who already are anti-Semitic.